We often pride ourselves on making smart, rational choices, right?
Yeah.
But what if I told you that human decision-making is actually, well, systematically flawed? And get this, flawed in predictable ways. That's the fascinating idea we're unpacking today.
Exactly. We're diving deep into the work of Dan Ariely. He's a behavioral economist at MIT, and specifically his book, Predictably Irrational. He pretty much throws out the window that common assumption that we're fundamentally rational beings.
Right.
Instead, he shows how these invisible, sometimes illogical forces are constantly skewing our reasoning. And what makes his work really compelling, I think, is where it came from. His whole journey started after a really severe burn injury when he was young.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he spent a long, long time in the hospital, and that gave him this unique kind of outsider's view on human behavior. He started questioning things that seemed obvious, like the standard ways they managed his pain during bandage changes. He just thought there has to be a better way. And that curiosity, that questioning, basically sank his entire career in this field.
So that's our mission for you today. We're going to explore how things like our expectations, our emotions, even social norms, can systematically lead us astray, often without us even noticing. The goal here is for you to walk away with some real aha moments about your own brain.
Yeah, and maybe even find a shortcut to making, genuinely better choices.
Okay, let's start unpacking this. One fundamental truth is, well, our brains seem wired to compare things. We often don't really know what we want unless we see it in context.
Yeah.
Right? It really is all about relativity.
It's so deeply ingrained. Think about the Ebbinghaus illusion, that visual trick, where the middle circle looks like it changes size depending on the circles around it.
Oh, yeah, I know that one.
Even though it's the exact same size, our minds do that all the time with everything. Whether you're picking out a toaster or thinking about careers or even relationships, we're always comparing, not looking at things in absolute terms.
And this comparing thing leads to some powerful effects, like the decoy effect. I love the example Ariely uses about the Economist subscription. So imagine you get 3 choices.
Okay.
Internet only for $59, print only for $125, and then print and web together for also $125.
Okay. Same price for the last 2.
Exactly. So they gave this choice to about 100 students at MIT's business school. 16 went for internet only. 84, a huge majority, chose the print and web bundle. And guess how many chose print only?
Let me guess. 0.
0. That print only option, the one nobody picked, that was the decoy. By putting it there at the same price as the bundle, it suddenly made the bundle look like an obvious, amazing deal.
Right, like you're getting the web version for free.
Precisely. Even if maybe the cheaper internet only option was all you really needed. Makes you feel smart, like you found a bargain.
And you see this decoy thing everywhere once you look for it, like in real estate. A realtor might show you, say, 2 similar colonial houses and 1 modern one. One colonial is perfect, the other is similar, but maybe needs a bit of work and is slightly cheaper.
Yeah.
That slightly damaged one, it's the decoy. It makes the perfect colonial look like the clear winner, maybe even better than the modern house. It just frames the choice. Or even, Ariely suggests, in dating. Bringing a friend who's sort of similar to you, but maybe slightly less attractive could, by comparison, make you seem more appealing. It's all relative.
Wow, that's maybe a bit calculating for dating advice.
Well, yeah, maybe don't tell your friend they're the decoy, but it illustrates the principle. It even happened with the introduction of bread makers. The first model was super expensive, then they introduced a slightly cheaper one.
And people bought the cheaper one.
Exactly. The first expensive one acted as a decoy, making the second one seem like a reasonable purchase. It actually jump-started the market.
So relativity helps us choose, but it's got a darker side too, hasn't it? This constant comparison can really fuel envy and unhappiness. Ariely tells this story about a guy making like $300,000 a year.
Which sounds pretty good.
Right. But he's miserable. Why? Because his colleagues were making $310,000. He was earning way more than he ever expected, but that small difference, that comparison, just poisoned everything for him.
And think about that on a larger scale. Remember when they started publicly disclosing CEO salaries back in '93? The idea was to shame companies into lowering executive pay.
Yeah, I remember that. Did it work?
Not at all. It completely backfired. Once salaries were public, CEOs started comparing themselves to the highest paid people out there. It triggered this massive arms race in compensation.
Seriously?
Yeah. Back in the 70s, CEOs made maybe 36 times the average worker. Now it's closer to 370 times. That public comparison, meant to curb pay, actually caused it to explode.
That is just wild. And it's not just CEOs. There was that story about the doctor, right? the cancer researcher.
Oh, yeah, the one dreaming of a Nobel Prize. He was perfectly happy earning, what, $160,000 or something?
Right, until he found out some old friends had gone to Wall Street advising on medical investments and were making way, way more. Suddenly they had yachts, vacation homes.
And he felt poor.
Exactly. He felt poor in comparison. So he ditched the Nobel dream, went to Wall Street himself, and ended up earning 10 times what his doctor friends did. The comparison completely changed his life's direction.
It really shows how these relative judgments anchor us, which leads us to another key idea: arbitrary coherence and anchoring. Think about the story of James Assail, the Pearl King.
Black pearls, right.
Tahitian black pearls. Back in the 70s, nobody really wanted them. They weren't considered valuable. So Assail did something brilliant. He got Harry Winston, the famous jeweler, to display them right next to diamonds and emeralds on Fifth Avenue.
Setting a high anchor.
Precisely. He advertised them in glossy magazines alongside the most expensive gems. He took something of uncertain worth and anchored its value incredibly high. Suddenly, black pearls were luxurious, desirable. It's like Conrad Lorenz's Goslings, you know.
The imprinting.
Yeah. The first moving thing they see, they imprint on it, follow it everywhere. That first impression, that first anchor becomes incredibly powerful and shapes everything that follows.
So are we basically like those Goslings? Do our first impressions just stick like that? There was that MIT experiment with Social Security numbers, wasn't there?
That's a fantastic example of arbitrary anchoring. They asked students to write down the last 2 digits of their Social Security number, totally random, arbitrary number for each person.
Okay.
Then they asked them to bid on various items like a bottle of wine, a keyboard, stuff like that. And guess what?
The ones with higher SSN digits bid more.
Significantly more. Students whose numbers ended in, say, 80 to 99 bid way higher, like an average of $56 for a cordless keyboard. Those with low-ending numbers, 1 to 20, bid only $16 for the same keyboard.
Just based on a random number they wrote down beforehand.
Exactly. The anchor, even though it was completely arbitrary, stuck and influenced how much they were willing to pay. But here's the kicker, their relative preferences were still consistent.
What do you mean?
Like, everyone still valued the keyboard more than, say, a trackball mouse. The anchor didn't scramble their internal ranking of items. It just shifted the whole price scale up or down depending on that initial random number. It created coherence around an arbitrary starting point.
Wow.
And this anchoring doesn't just happen once. It leads to something called self-herding. This is where we make decisions based on our own past behavior.
Like following yourself.
Pretty much. Think about Starbucks. Maybe the first time you went, you weren't sure, but you bought a coffee. The next time, you think, well, I went to Starbucks before, I must like it. So you go again.
Right, it becomes a habit.
Exactly. You start lining up behind yourself, as Ariely puts it. You build this habit based on that initial decision, and you start believing that Starbucks is worth the price, even if cheaper options exist. That first choice becomes the anchor for all your future coffee choices.
So what's the big takeaway here for you listening? It really means you should try to consciously question your habits, your repeated behaviors. Especially pay attention to those first decisions you make in a new situation.
Yeah, because those first choices can act like these invisible anchors, shaping your preferences and spending for potentially years to come without you even realizing it, like that first Starbucks coffee.
Recognizing that kind of internal autopilot is really the first step toward making more conscious choices, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Let's talk about the incredible, sometimes totally irrational, power of free. I mean, have you ever grabbed something just because it was free, even if you didn't really need it?
Oh, definitely. We all have. And it turns out that 0, the price free, isn't just another number on the scale. It's different. It messes with our heads.
How so?
Well, Ariely did this great experiment with Lindt truffles, nice fancy chocolate, and basic Hershey's Kisses. First round, the truffle was 15 cents, the kiss was 1 cent.
Okay, seems reasonable. Truffles, better quality.
Right. And people acted rationally. About 73% chose the truffle. Made sense, better value for the small extra cost. But then they changed the prices. The kiss became free, and the truffle dropped to 14 cents, still the same 14-cent difference in price.
So logically, people should still mostly choose the truffle, right? Still a better deal.
You'd think so. But the results flipped completely. Suddenly, 69% of people went for the free kiss. Only 31% took the truffle.
Wow. Just making it free changed everything.
Totally. The lure of free completely overwhelmed the rational calculation of value. That 0 price point has this magnetic pull.
It reminds me of the Amazon free shipping story. They rolled out free shipping for orders over a certain amount, and sales boomed everywhere.
Except?
Except in France.
Right. Why France?
Because in France, shipping wasn't free. It was priced at just 1 franc, which was tiny, like 20 cents. Almost nothing, but it wasn't zero.
So that tiny charge made all the difference.
Huge difference. As soon as Amazon made shipping truly free in France too, boom, sales surged there just like everywhere else.
Yeah.
That transition from a tiny cost to zero was critical.
Why is free so powerful then? What's the psychology? A big part of it seems to be our aversion to loss. When something is free, there's no perceived downside, no risk of making a bad choice or losing anything. If you choose something that costs money, even a tiny amount, there's always that little nagging feeling, did I make the right decision? Is this worth it?
So free eliminates that feeling of potential regret or loss.
Exactly. There's no visible possibility of loss, it's just pure upside. AOL found this out the hard way when they switched from pay-per-hour internet to a flat monthly fee, basically making unlimited usage free after you paid the flat rate.
Oh, I remember that. Chaos, right.
Total chaos. Demand went through the roof. Their systems crashed constantly. People acted like, as Ariely says, starving people at a buffet when faced with the free unlimited access.
I could even see this in my own decisions sometimes. Ariely mentioned choosing an Audi over a minivan, partly because Audi offered free oil changes for 3 years.
Right, and he calculated it. How much was that actually worth?
Like $150 total, maybe?
Yeah.
Less than 1% of the car's price. Objectively tiny, but subjectively.
It felt huge. That word free just has this emotional tag attached to it that bypasses our rational calculation. It's a really powerful effect.
And this idea of hidden values and non-monetary effects brings us nicely to social norms versus market norms.
Yeah.
Just try imagining this. What would happen if you offered your mother-in-law $50 for that amazing Thanksgiving dinner she cooked?
Oof. Yeah, that would not go over well. Instant disaster. Because you'd be mixing two totally different worlds.
Explain that. What are the two worlds?
So Ariely says we live in two realities. One is governed by social norms. That's the world of community, friendship, favors, helping your neighbor move. It's warm, fuzzy, no expectation of immediate payback.
Yeah.
The other world is governed by market norms. That's business, wages, prices, rent, costs, benefits. It's sharp-edged, transactional quid pro quo. You pay for what you get.
And the problem is when they collide.
Big problems, like offering your mother-in-law cash. Or think about dating. If someone starts mentioning how much the dates are costing them, it can kill the romance instantly. Why? Because they just dragged market norms into a social relationship.
Right. It feels cheap.
Exactly. And experiments show this clearly. They had people do a boring task, like dragging circles on a computer screen. Some got paid different amounts, more money, more effort, generally. Makes sense.
Look at norms.
Right. But another group was just asked to do it as a favor, a social request. No money mentioned. And guess what? They worked just as hard as the people getting the highest payment.
Wow. So the social motivation was as strong as money.
Yes. But here's the twist. If they offered a small gift instead of money, say a little chocolate bar without mentioning its cost, people still worked hard. Still social norms.
Okay.
If they mentioned the cost of the chocolate bar, here's a 50-cent chocolate bar for helping, effort plummeted down to the level of the lowest paid group. Mentioning the price, even for a gift, instantly flipped the switch to market norms.
That's fascinating. So the mere mention of money changes the whole dynamic.
Completely. And this has huge implications for companies. Think about businesses that try to cultivate a family atmosphere or act like a good neighbor, invoking social norms to build loyalty.
Like insurance companies or banks sometimes do.
Yeah. But what happens when that company needs to cut costs? They lay people off, slash benefits. Suddenly they're acting purely on market norms. And that feeling of betrayal can destroy employee morale and loyalty far more than if it had always been just a transactional relationship.
So you can't just switch back and forth easily.
It's very hard. Once market norms enter, they tend to push out social norms. Think about professions like police officers or firefighters. A lot of their motivation comes from social norms, duty, pride, helping the community. If you try to rely purely on market incentives, you might actually undermine that deeper motivation.
Or that daycare center example. The fines for late parents.
Classic example. They introduce a fine for parents who picked up their kids late, thinking it would reduce lateness. Market norm solution. But it increased lateness.
Why?
Because parents stopped feeling guilty, social norm, and started seeing the fine as just a fee for a service, market norm. They were now paying for being late, so it was okay. And worse, when the daycare removed the fine later, The lateness didn't go back down. The social norm had been permanently damaged.
That makes you wonder about things like education policy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Focusing heavily on standardized test scores and performance pay for teachers.
Right. Could that shift education further away from the social norms of curiosity and love of learning towards purely market norms, where teachers teach to the test and students just focus on grades for future earning potential?
It's a real risk. Maybe that's why something like Burning Man, which is this huge temporary city built entirely on gifting and decommodification, no money changes hands, feels so different. It's tapping into those powerful social norms.
It certainly operates on a different set of principles.
Okay, this is getting really interesting. Let's shift again. How much do we really know ourselves, especially when our emotions are running high?
The gap between our cool, rational self and our hot, emotional self. The Berkeley sexual arousal experiment is pretty revealing here.
Go on.
They asked male college students a bunch of questions about their sexual preferences, moral boundaries, likelihood of using condoms. First, when they were in a normal, cold state. Then they asked them the same questions while the students were, well, sexually aroused.
And the answers changed.
Dramatically. In the aroused state, their willingness to engage in unconventional or even morally questionable sexual acts shot way up. Their stated intention to use condoms plummeted by 25%. They basically became different people.
So the rational self couldn't predict the aroused self's behavior?
Not accurately at all. It's like Dr. Jekyll failing to understand Mr. Hyde. We systematically underestimate the power of arousal and other strong emotional states on our judgment and behavior.
Okay, so what can we do about that, knowing this gap exists?
Well, it points towards the need for what you might call precautionary devices or pre-commitment strategies if you know you make bad decisions when you're angry.
Maybe don't send that email right away.
Exactly. Put in drafts, wait till you cool down. If you know you might splurge when you're feeling impulsive, maybe set up barriers beforehand. For safe sex, the obvious one is carrying condoms before you're in the heat of the moment.
Right. Commit to the safer behavior when you're rational.
Yeah. Ariely even half-jokingly mentions ideas for cars that might, say, restrict speed if you exceed the limit, or even automatically call your mom if you drive too recklessly. The point is using your cold state to put constraints on your potential hot state behavior.
This ties into procrastination too, doesn't it?
Mm.
We know we should do things like exercise or save money or get that health checkup,
Yeah.
but we put it off.
Absolutely. Procrastination is a huge disconnect between our intentions and actions. The experiment with student paper deadlines was very telling. 3 groups. One had fixed deadlines set by the professor throughout the semester.
Okay. Strict structure.
One had 0 deadlines, just submit all papers by the very end. Total freedom.
Uh-oh. I can see where this is going.
And the third group got to choose their own deadlines for each paper, but with penalties if they missed their self-imposed dates.
So who did best?
The fixed deadline group got the best grades, the no deadline group did the worst, and the self-imposed deadline group, they fell right in the middle.
Interesting. So giving ourselves deadlines helps, but maybe not as much as external ones.
Exactly. We know we procrastinate, and we'll use tools to commit ourselves, but we often don't set the optimal deadlines for ourselves. This suggests potential solutions for things like healthcare, maybe refundable deposits for showing up to medical tests.
It get costly to procrastinate.
Right. Or look at Ford Motor Company. They realized people procrastinated on car maintenance because it was confusing 18,000 possible service combinations, so they simplified it drastically.
Yeah.
They bundled everything into just 3 simple service intervals, easy to remember, easy to schedule. Procrastination dropped, and their service bays got much busier. Sometimes simplifying the choice architecture is the key.
Okay, let's talk about ownership. Why do we value things more just because they're ours? The endowment effect.
Ah, yes. The Duke basketball ticket experiment is the classic example here. Duke has this crazy lottery system for students to get tickets to big games. It's pure luck who gets one.
Right. Highly desirable tickets.
So Ariely surveyed students who won tickets in the lottery and asked how much they'd sell them for. And he asked students who didn't win how much they'd pay to buy one.
And there was a difference?
A massive difference. The students who owned the tickets, the sellers, wanted around $2,400 on average. The students who didn't own them, the buyers, were only willing to pay about $170.
14 times more just because they happened to win the lottery.
Exactly. The mere fact of owning the ticket dramatically inflated its perceived value to the owner.
Why does that happen?
It seems strongly linked to loss aversion. When we own something, selling it feels like a loss. And psychologically, losses loom much larger than equivalent gains.
Yeah.
We focus on what we're giving up.
So the pain of losing the ticket feels greater than the pleasure of gaining the money for the seller.
That seems to be a big part of it. And it applies to virtual ownership, too, like in online auctions. The longer you're the high bidder, the more you feel like you already own the item, making you willing to bid even higher to avoid the loss.
And this doesn't just apply to stuff, right? It applies to ideas, too.
Absolutely. We own our ideas, our opinions, our viewpoints, and because we own them, we value them more highly and become resistant to giving them up, even when presented with contradictory evidence. It contributes to rigidity in our thinking.
So the advice here is,
try to cultivate a bit of detachment. When making a transaction, try to view it from the perspective of a non-owner. And with your ideas and beliefs, remember that just because you own an idea doesn't automatically make it valuable or correct. Be willing to examine and potentially let go.
okay, now for expectations. How much does what we expect actually shape our experience?
Immensely. It can literally change our physical perception. Take the MIT pub experiment with beer.
The Muddy Charles Pub.
That's the one. They offered students free samples of 2 beers, regular Budweiser, and what they called MIT brew. Unbeknownst to the students, the MIT brew was just Budweiser with a few drops of balsamic vinegar added.
Balsamic vinegar in beer. Ew.
That's what most people would think. But here's the thing. In blind taste tests, where people didn't know what was in it, they actually preferred the MIT brew slightly over the regular Budweiser.
Seriously.
Yep. But when another group was told beforehand that the MIT brew contained vinegar, they overwhelmingly disliked it. Their expectation completely changed their sensory experience. It wasn't just psychological, it seemed to alter the actual taste perception.
So expectations can literally change what we taste, see, or hear.
It really seems so. Another coffee experiment showed this too. They served the same coffee to different groups. One group got it with standard, cheap-looking milk and sugar containers. The other got the same coffee, but with fancy, upscale-looking condiment containers, silver trays, nice labels, etc.
And the coffee tasted better with the fancy stuff.
People rated it as tasting significantly better and said they'd be willing to pay more for it, just because the presentation created higher expectations, even though the coffee itself was identical.
Wow. And this obviously extends beyond food and drink, right? Like stereotype.
Oh, absolutely. Stereotypes are basically a powerful form of expectation. They create expectations about how groups or individuals will behave, and these expectations can influence both our perception of them and even their actual performance.
How does it affect performance?
There was a study with Asian American women taking a math test. If they were subtly reminded of their Asian identity, stereotype good at math, beforehand, they performed better. If they were reminded of their female identity, stereotype not as good at math, they performed worse. The expectation primed by the stereotype influenced their actual ability on the test.
That's troubling.
It is, and it works in subtle ways too. Priming people with words associated with being elderly actually caused them to walk more slowly down a hallway afterwards, without them realizing it. Expectations are powerful shortcuts for the brain, but they can also lead to biases and self-fulfilling prophecies.
And they can escalate conflict too, right? If we expect the worst from someone.
We're likely to interpret their actions negatively, which then affects how we respond, potentially confirming our initial negative expectation. It's a vicious cycle. This is why Ariely suggests that for resolving disputes, presenting the facts blindly without revealing who did what initially can be helpful.
Strip away the expectations based on affiliation.
Exactly. Focus on the substance, not the preconceived notions.
Okay, let's delve into a slightly uncomfortable topic. Dishonesty. Here's a startling fact Ariely highlights. Employee theft and internal fraud cost the U.S. economy vastly more than all external robberies, burglaries, and car thefts combined. Yeah, the numbers are staggering, like $16 billion for robberies and stuff in 1 year versus an estimated $600 billion for employee theft and fraud. It suggests that maybe a lot of us, seemingly ordinary, honest people, are engaging in small acts of dishonesty.
So are most people cheating? Just a little bit?
The experiments suggest yes. At Harvard Business School, they gave students a math task where they could easily cheat and over-report their score to earn more money. And most students did cheat.
Oh, dear.
But, and this is crucial, they only cheated by a little bit. On average, they claimed maybe 1 or 2 extra correct answers, not the maximum possible. It's like there's an internal fudge factor. We want to benefit a little, but not so much that we have to change our self-image as reasonably honest people.
Trying to have our cake and eat it too, ethically speaking.
Sort of, yeah. But here's the really fascinating part. In other versions of the experiment, before the math task, they had students simply recall the 10 Commandments, or sign a statement invoking the university's honor code.
Just a quick moral reminder. Exactly. And what happened? Cheating dropped to zero. Completely disappeared.
Wow. Just thinking about morality for a second wiped out the cheating.
It seems so. It suggests that dishonesty isn't necessarily a calculated cost-benefit analysis, but more about whether our conscience is activated at the moment of temptation.
And this ties into the idea of distance from cash, right?
Yes, very strongly. Remember the MIT dorm fridge experiment? They put a 6-pack of Coke cans in the communal fridges, gone within hours. Then they put a plate with $6 bills stayed there untouched for days.
Huh. Same value, different outcome.
Because taking a Coke feels different. Less like direct stealing than taking cash. The further removed the action is from actual money, the easier it seems to be dishonest.
It's like padding an expense report.
Exactly. Or taking office supplies, inflating an insurance claim, wardrobing, buying clothes, wearing them once, then returning them, even manipulating airline miles. When students in the experiments cheated for non-monetary tokens that they later exchanged for cash, they cheated more than twice as much as when they cheated directly for cash.
That distance creates a psychological loophole.
It seems to. It allows us to maintain that honest person self-image more easily. It even applies to corporate stuff, like complex billing practices by credit card companies that make it hard to see the true cost.
It makes you wonder if even the design of money itself, with things like "in God we trust," acts as a subtle, constant moral reminder.
It's possible anything that brings ethics to the forefront of our mind seems to curb that temptation to fudge things.
Okay, final section here. Let's talk about how other people influence our choices, sometimes in weird ways. Ever been at a restaurant and ordered something just because everyone else did? Or maybe ordered something different just to stand out?
Oh yeah, social influence is huge. Ariely tested this at a brewery, the Carolina Brewery. They offered free beer samples. In one condition, people ordered their beer out loud, one by one, so everyone heard what the others chose.
Public choice.
Right. In the other condition, they wrote their order down privately on a menu.
Okay, so what happened when they ordered out loud?
They chose a wider variety of beers within the group. People seemed less likely to order the same thing someone else just had, but paradoxically, they reported being less satisfied with their choice afterwards.
They chose variety, but liked it less. Why?
It seems driven by a need for uniqueness, especially strong in individualistic cultures like the US. People ordered something different to assert their individuality, even if it wasn't the beer they actually wanted most. In private, they just chose what they preferred and were happier.
That's interesting. So sometimes being different makes us less happy.
In that context, yes. Interestingly, they did a similar study in Hong Kong, a more collectivist culture. There, people tended to order more similarly in public conforming, but they were also less happy than when they ordered privately. Either conforming or striving for uniqueness seemed to compromise personal preference.
So the simple solution for restaurants wanting happier customers might be:
have people write down their orders privately before saying them. It sounds trivial, but it could actually boost overall satisfaction by letting people choose what they genuinely want without that social pressure.
Okay, bringing all these threads together. If we are so predictably irrational in all these ways, influenced by relativity, anchors, free stuff, social norms, emotions, ownership, expectations, dishonesty, social pressure, what does that mean for the bigger picture?
What fundamentally challenges that core assumption of classical economics, that humans are rational actors making optimal choices. If our irrationality is systematic and predictable, as Ariely argues, then maybe we need to design systems, policies, and products differently.
How so?
Instead of assuming people will make the rational choice, like saving enough for retirement or getting preventative health care, maybe we need systems that nudge us towards better outcomes, acknowledging our inherent biases and shortcomings. We can't just rely on market forces to magically correct our mistakes if those mistakes are baked into our psychology.
But the good news, I suppose, is that understanding when and where we tend to go wrong gives us power.
Right. Absolutely. Awareness is the first step. Once you know about the decoy effect or anchoring or the power of free E, you can be more vigilant. You can start to spot these forces at work in your own life and maybe make different, better choices. We can learn to work with our irrational tendencies, or at least guard against them.
So wrapping this up, what's a key takeaway for you, the listener, from this whole deep dive into predictable irrationality? Maybe take a moment, think about your own life. What are the anchors, the imprints, those first decisions that might still be shaping your habits today?
Yeah, question those repeated behaviors. Are you still going to that same coffee shop just because you started going there years ago? Is that belief you hold dear really based on evidence or just the fact that you've owned it for a long time?
Recognizing that internal autopilot, like we said, is so crucial for making truly conscious choices.
And maybe consider this. If we know we fail to truly understand ourselves in different emotional states, calm versus aroused, happy versus angry, how much can we really trust our predictions about our own future behavior? It suggests we need humility and maybe those pre-commitment strategies we talked about.
Hmm.
And perhaps if we accept that we're all somewhat trapped in our own perspective, biased by our expectations and experiences, it highlights the value of seeking out neutral third parties or diverse viewpoints when facing complex conflicts or decisions.
Socrates famously said the unexamined life is not worth living. Maybe the predictably irrational life, once you actually examine it, offers all sorts of opportunities for improvement. Opportunities for what behavioral economists sometimes call free lunches.
Exactly. Simple ways to make better choices, avoid common pitfalls, and ultimately maybe live a slightly better, more rational, or perhaps just more self-aware life.